Hi, this is Cara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Cara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Today's episode includes somebody who is my name twin. How fun is that? Her name is Cara Marie, and I am Cara Marie. And I regret not name dropping our names more in the episode. Maybe I should re-record it because, people like us, Cara Maries, don't have the opportunity to have name buddies like this all the time. So besides loving her name, I love who this mom is. Cara is somebody that I really enjoyed the conversation with her. I record these introductions after recording the episodes usually. And so I have the benefit of knowing what all we talked about. And we talked about the things people say to special needs moms and what it brings up for us. And we explored different opportunities that we both might employ as we kind of question what gets triggered in us and what we might want instead. I think Cara did an excellent job of just showing where she's at in the process. And she has this beautifully thought out actual words for the different steps we go through as a special needs mom. And I think you're really going to love that and be able to identify where you're at in this step currently now. And I think just even having that awareness, like an acceptance of where you're at now, can be a beautiful thing. And knowing that you're not always going to be there. Anyhow, that was one of my favorite parts of the episode. And with that said, I'm going to get right into the episode, but enjoy listening to this episode and being inspired by Cara, wherever you're at in your journey, whether you have a child that does have medical complexities or whether your child has learning disabilities or physical disabilities, whatever the disability is, I believe that you can find commonality through her story. Enjoy. Well, Cara Marie, welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And before we get into it, we have to celebrate and giggle about the fact that we have the exact same name, which you really don't find a lot. So I'm also Cara Marie. I don't often use my middle name. It looks like you do a little bit more, but how cool is it that we have the same name?
Absolutely. We are awesome.
We are. We're really awesome. Well, so far this is going well. Okay, well, let's hear a little bit about you as a mom. Give us a picture of how long you've been a special needs mom and just kind of your journey in stepping into that.
So I became pregnant at 23 years old and I have PCOS, and I never thought that I would be able to even have children without fertility. So my son Asher, and he is my only son as of right now, he was a complete surprise to us. I had a pretty normal pregnancy with him. I did notice at our anatomy scan that he would have a club foot. We were told by high risk that he would have a club foot. And I thought that was the end of my world right there. I cried. I thought that was, he was never going to walk. I just thought that was it. And so I finally kind of worked through that, did research, figured out, what steps we would take to correct that when he was born. And then I had the rest of my pregnancy was pretty smooth sailing. I was on bed rest 2 weeks before I had him due to high blood pressure. And then I had him naturally. There was not really any complications. He did have the umbilical cord around his neck. So he was kind of taken out abruptly and taken to the nursery. However, he didn't suffer any complications. Going further, he was a pretty normal baby. He was never sick. He did kind of start missing some milestones around 6 months. He wasn't quite holding his head as well as most 6-month-olds do. And he was not rolling and just doing those milestones that you typically see around that time. So we kind of started looking at diagnoses of hypotonia, the low muscle tone. And we started seeing PT right around 9 months, 9 to 10, 11 months, and started early intervention right then. At that point, we thought maybe due to his club foot and a few other anomalies he had, like pectus excavatum, he had a small heart defect that closed on its own. He had the club foot, of course. So we kind of put all that together and thought maybe he has some type of genetic syndrome. So we were referred to genetics, and we did the microarray test, which kind of tests for everything that's, broad, like that's like right there, like Down syndrome and stuff like that. And that was negative. And that was about at 1 year that we finally got that test results back, and it was negative. So we were pretty happy about that, of course, but we also were like, something's going on. He had laryngomalacia at that point. He just kept having just little anomalies that were diagnosed, and we started seeing more specialists, and, it just kind of got more apparent that there was something going on, but we didn't know what it was. So fast forward to 18 months old, we finally got the whole exome sequencing test done through genetics, where they test every part of your DNA. So in August of 2020, he was 18 months and he started throwing up one day. He had never thrown up before. At that point, he was eating purees. He was never sick. He was healthy. He had good weight on him. He was happy. And he started throwing up, and we thought maybe it was just a stomach bug. And then he continued and he started losing weight. So then he started to get the diagnosis of failure to thrive. We kept getting discharged home with, it's constipation or it's just cyclic vomiting. So we were it was just a really hard time in our life, because at the same time that he was being diagnosed with all of these things going on, we finally got our genetic test results, and they told us that he had ATR-X syndrome. So while he's in the hospital, we get this diagnosis, and I remember at that time I was a 911 dispatcher, a new 911 dispatcher, and I remember looking up ATR-X while my husband was actually taking him to the hospital to be admitted for failure to thrive, dehydration. He wasn't eating, he was throwing everything up. So I remember looking up ATR-X, and all I read was most kids don't walk or talk. And I remember completely losing it and telling my supervisor, I've got to go. My kid's on the way to the hospital, and I just got this diagnosis. My kid may never walk or talk. And I left, and that was my last day of work there. I never came back because he was in the hospital so much, he needed me more than I was needed there. So that was the hardest part of our life, because we didn't know where our future was headed. We didn't know what was going on with him. With ATR-X syndrome, it's very rare. It's affected by boys. I think there's one or two noted girls in the world that are affected by ATR-X. But it's mostly boys. So you'll hear me reference boys or the boys. So most of the boys have GI issues, epilepsy, hypotonia, breathing issues, respiratory issues. Some of them do not walk or talk, but some of them do. It's really broad. So, we don't really know what the future is until we get there. So we do as much therapy with him as we can to get him to reach his ability. So back to what was going on at 18 months, he just started developing all of his GI issues out of nowhere. So you're in the hospital a lot. It led to a feeding tube. He then became septic. He almost died. He was in the ICU. So that part of our lives right now is just a blur to me. It was so traumatic. Our once healthy child now has the syndrome. Now he's in the hospital. Nobody really locally knows what to do with him. Now he's got a feeding tube. Now, what's next? So he did pretty well with his feeding tube at first. And then he started vomiting again, all of his formula, so that he lost all of his weight, and he was severely malnourished. He was basically wasting away. I remember looking at him in January of 2021, and in the middle of the night, it was 10 p.m. and I told my husband, we have got to go to the hospital right now, because you could see his bones. He was so sick. So we drove 4 hours out of town to a bigger hospital that had more resources for us. And he received a GJ tube. The G feeds into the stomach. The J feeds into the intestines. Therefore, he wouldn't throw up, so then he can gain weight. So he did really well with that until about December. So a few months ago, he started having extreme GI pain. And it led to a 2.5-month stay in Cincinnati, Ohio, their children's hospital. So we have had tons of admissions that have taken so much of our life. We've missed out on a lot of time at home with him. Through the admissions, he does physical therapy twice a week. He does OT once a week, aquatic therapy, feeding therapy, occupational therapy. So all of these therapies, all of these specialist appointments, all of these admissions have taken a lot of our life with him. He's 3 now. So he graduated early intervention recently, and he's supposed to start pre-K soon. And it's really sad to think about. I haven't hardly had any time with him, and now he's going to school. So I've learned a lot about the special needs life just in the past 1.5 to 2 years. I really think of it as steps. First, you realize that you are a special needs mom, and that comes with a lot of tough conversations or thinking about the future. confusion, figuring this out. How does this work for your family? How do you deal with this? And then the next step is, okay, you accept it. You are moving on from it. What does your child need? You need to figure that out and get that into your everyday lives. And then the next step is you're helping other moms just like you when you were in their shoes, and you're reaching out to other mothers just to offer them a helping hand. And you are connecting with people just so you have a support system. So I like to think of myself in that step right now. I have went through my freak out phase. I'm figured out what I need to do, on a daily basis. I've organized all of his appointments. And now in this life, I'm just kind of what can I do for somebody else that's in my shoes? And so that's kind of just what I'm doing now. I am a big advocate for families like us, and just doing anything I can do, whether it be any type of donation or fundraiser or just being mental support. That's basically what we need.
I love the way that you broke it down into these steps. Very clever. And I'm going to add something onto that because I'm laughing about this. I have the unfortunate luxury of having many more years, having practiced being a special needs mom, and not to say that I have it figured out by any means, but I guess what I've experienced is going through these steps over and over again. Right? I'm sure you can even see that you yourself have gone through them actually, just how you explained. When you first learned that he had a club foot, you did all that, right? You probably went through all those steps. And then as you've encountered each challenge and diagnosis, you've probably gone through these steps again. And so I love the way that you've given words to the process of becoming a special needs mom. And I think that service aspect it's a beautiful thing because I feel like it helps us as much as it helps the mom that we're helping. Because the question I have is like, why do all of us want to go help everybody else when clearly we need a lot of help ourselves? I think there's part of it that feels like we're getting our power back by turning the horrible things that we've gone through and helping somebody else. I think it's access to us experiencing something very different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as you have said, we have been in those shoes before, now, and will continue to be in those shoes. So I think about what helped me when I was at my lowest low. And it really is a roller coaster. You have your highs and you have your lows. And as you said, I anticipate my life always being like that, the highs and lows. So I think about what helped me when I was in desperation. Basically, that's what it was, desperation. And, I've had people that have influenced me, motivated me. I have people that tell me all the time that I'm encouragement to them, and I don't feel that. I don't resonate with that. So when they tell me that, I want to be that for someone else. And I've actually never had this type of aspiration to do things for other people or advocate for other people until it was me, until it was my family. And I have been this life. When I first started going into these, whatever you want to call it, these tribulations, I had friends or family, special needs families that would tell me, you have to advocate for your child. Nobody will do it for you, and you are their voice. So that's one of the things that I put into other mothers that are kind of new on this journey is it's important. I know it's hard if you're not an outspoken person. I've never been outspoken, but now people, if I go in the hospital, they know, oh, Asher's mom is here. So they know that things are going to be done the right way. And that's very important because these physicians, these therapists, they don't know your child like you know your child. So that's very important to me, that I instill that in a new special needs mother. Is whether you are outspoken or not, you will be once you get going into this journey. And it just warms my heart also to see that I have relieved somebody, whether it's a donation or a drive or something in memory of somebody, or even just a sweet gesture that I enlightened their day. I know how hard this is every day. And something as small as just a small card that says, "Hey, I'm thinking of you and you're strong," that brightens my day, even if I don't want to hear it or I don't believe it. So anything like that, it just puts on my heart to do that for somebody else.
Yeah, I think having been so often in the receiving end of kind gestures, it's interesting actually, because I did some fundraising for this latest chapter of my son, and what I've reflected on is the difference between receiving a large donation and a small donation. Like the feeling is the same, whether it's $5 or $1,000 of like, wow, you went out of your way, you did something to help me, and like that means a lot. And I just thought it was interesting how, of course, we appreciate the large gifts. And just for me as somebody that really to not lose sight of like, it's the small things we do. It's the really small things that we do that matter. That matter to when they've been done for us and to us and for our children. And of course, we can use that experience to give back to others. I want to talk about the things people say. So as we were kind of preparing for this episode, I read a couple things that you wrote. I wanted to talk to you because I think there's things people say to special needs moms, and I think it's kind of funny to talk about them. So let's talk about the things people say and what we think about them, and not just to bash on them, but actually what I want to get to is like a place of curiosity and understanding of why these comments might trigger us. And I don't know, like we'll explore it together. I don't necessarily have an agenda of where we have to get to, but let's look at the first saying of what people say. The first one, "I'm glad your son is doing so well." And you wrote that somewhere. I can't recall exactly where, but it stuck out to me because my personal experience is we have a blog, or not even a blog, it's a Caring Bridge. We'll update it and I'll put the things on there and people will respond saying, "I'm glad he's doing so well." As we talk here, I'm going to kind of explore like what happens for me. There's part of me that doesn't feel like they see the whole picture, where I'm like, what did I not communicate to have that be your response? Because for all the things he's doing well, we have all the things that are still not put together. And I'm really kind of even more looking at the medical part of it. Obviously, it's different, the impact of the medical versus kind of the other growth and development. And I guess I want to hear your thoughts on like what comes up for you when someone says, as a response to you giving an update, "I'm glad he's doing so well."
Absolutely. I am experiencing this daily. Right now, I'm experiencing this every day. People see me in public, or they see me at the doctor's office or therapy, and they say, "Oh my gosh, he looks so well. He's doing so well." And I know that they follow my posts, so I don't understand also where that kind of comes from. I don't know if I'm just, and please, anybody that's listening to this, I'm absolutely not bashing anybody for this. I'm confused. So Asher has recently gained a lot of weight. So he does physically look better. I post a lot of updates about him because I have a lot of people that follow his journey, and I really appreciate. I don't think that I would get through this journey without you guys that follow us. So I'm very open, and I do share a lot. I do share when he is not feeling well, which is every day. My son has severe motility issues in his gut, so meaning he cannot really pass stool without extreme pain and sweating and shaking, and it leads to neurological issues, sometimes seizures, and it's a daily battle. It's not just here and there, it's extreme day to day, and nothing really helps him at this point. We're trying to figure that out, and here soon that will be another admission. But anyways, to get back to the question, people say, "Oh, well, he looks so well." He does. He looks good. He's happy if he doesn't have to poop. He's a very happy boy. What he's been through and the pain that he goes through, it's just crazy to see him smile through all of that pain. He's such a strong boy, but I do share that he is in pain because I ask for people to pray for him. So it confuses me. Yes, he is physically looks well, maybe, but no, behind the scenes, you don't see me up all night. You don't see me crying with him, praying or asking why him, like, give me the pain. You don't see the 5,000 enemas I have to give him daily just to help him out of pain. And sometimes it doesn't help. So we're up all night, and so I don't know if I'm not transparent enough. It just I hate to say, yeah, no, he's not doing well. I hate to be a downer, but no, he is happy. He's seemingly healthy, but he's not okay. He's hurting.
Yeah. Okay. So as you've been talking and sharing, I've been also kind of processing and thinking and obviously listening. And I think there's a couple things here. So one thing that you just said is, I don't want to be a downer. And this reminds me of a time, I'll share a story for myself as well, is early when my son was getting kind of and multiply diagnosed with more brain tumors. I noticed that I really did not want to tell people. I mean, I told my close family, of course, right away, but like sharing it out into the world, I was like, oh, I just don't want to share it. And I think there was, as I've looked into that a little bit further, I think I was trying to control other people's responses by not like, I don't want to tell them, because when I tell them, they're going to have their response. And then their response likely will have me have more thoughts and feelings about this. And so for me, I was trying to control my experience by like not telling them so that I didn't have to be with their emotions. And you just saying like, oh, I don't want to be a downer. It's like we try to caretake other people, like, oh, I don't want to bring somebody else down by telling them this pretty horrific news that your son is like in pain, right? Or in my shoes, like telling somebody that my child has a brain tumor, like they have a response to that. And it's a lot to be with, like, for me. And then I think for me, it inspires me to break down my own, like, oh my gosh, I get that is really bad. I am really scared. You're right. This is not good. Whereas maybe I'm fooling myself if I don't have to be with their response. So I don't know. I think it's just something to just observe. It's like, are we in not sharing authentically? Are we potentially trying to caretake other people and maybe even like protect ourselves from being with the impact of how our kids truly are? And not to say it's not like also socially awkward to be like, I don't know how to answer this question of how you're doing, because either we say, I'm great, thank you, or like it's a half an hour conversation. So there's that too. I'm still working out that. So that was one thing that came up. Any comments on that before I go to the other thought I have about it?
Yeah, I really see your point of view with seeing what the other person will take from what you say, because I can say, I follow a lot of medically fragile children, and I'm an empath, and sometimes hearing their latest news, it can be life devastating. And sometimes that really hurts my heart. So, being from that perspective, that really kind of does make sense. And I've actually never thought about that. So, and this is great to, talk with another mom, and figure this out together.
Yeah. Again, that kind of leads into the other thing I wanted to mention about part of this dynamic of us kind of, like you said, like I put posts out there and I tell people, yeah, this is the latest with his medical picture. And the response back is, I'm glad he's doing so well. So it's like a little bit of confusion. Like, did you read my post? Like, did you hear the words coming out of my mouth? And I think the answer is actually they didn't hear the words coming out of your mouth, because all of us have these filters that we put on to protect ourselves, right? And so for most of us, don't desire to be with hard feelings. And it's hard to be with a mom whose child is suffering or is not doing well or is missing milestones or whatever the thing is. We are like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say as moms, right? So putting ourselves in the shoes of the parent that is our friend or acquaintance, whatever they might be, recognizing that there's nothing wrong with them, but recognizing that their capacity to be with the pain that you're experiencing might not be there. They might not be available for that. And sometimes like it just allowing them to have their own experience and recognizing it's separate from yours. It doesn't mean you didn't communicate well or accurately or authentically or openly or transparently. It just might mean their ears are filtered to not be able to receive that yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think also it's just lack of medical knowledge. So sometimes they
Yeah.
just may not even know what that means. If I say my son has neuropathic dysmotility, what does that mean? You know, I might as well just say, hey, he has a tummy ache. And then they also may not know the severity of, you know, what that means and what that means for us. They may not know, oh, that means I'm up all night with a screaming child and nothing to do for him. They just may not understand the extent. And that's okay, because I don't always understand the extent of, you know, other. I'm more so knowledgeable in the GI area. I worked in GI actually for a very long time, ironically, before I had Asher. And now that's all his issue. So, you know, if you tell me about your son's brain tumors, I actually may not understand what that means. So I may not be as empathetic in the way that you are. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Also, I would like to just mention sometimes you just don't even want to go through, you know, what is going on. So you just say, oh, okay, he's doing great. And then, you know, it's not like, you know, you just make something up sometimes, because you don't have all day to say, take a seat and let me load it on you.
Yes, actually, I think that's a great thing to put in here. I've had certain friends reach out and want to know, hey, how's it going? And I kind of refer them back to the Caring Bridge that we update, because I'm like, I actually put a lot of effort into updating this thing so I don't have to retell the story 100 times. And some of my friends take that opportunity and some of them don't. And that's okay. But then what I notice is it's then not my responsibility to answer. I don't have to answer the question, which sounds very simple when I say it out loud, but I am a person that I'm like, I try to respond to all my messages, and many people don't operate like that, and that's fine. Okay, you said something really, really great here, and it's a really good point. I'm so glad you brought it up. The medical knowledge piece. And more importantly, and even if it's not medical knowledge, I think this can broadcast over any difference or any diagnosis. You were talking about how people may not know what that means, right? So like what it means for you that your son has this condition. Actually, it was funny. Earlier when you're describing all your son's things, like there was a lot of things I had no idea what they were. You rattled them off like they were like air, which is not a problem. But I think what happens to us as special needs moms is this is our day in, our day out. This is our life. And so we forget about the life that we had before this, where we had no idea what any of this stuff was. But I think more importantly, though, is what you hit on is people don't know what a diagnosis means to what it actually looks like in our life. Like that, I'll use myself as an example again, like because my son was radiation nauseous and sick on Sunday, and he has a condition called diabetes insipidus, which means that he doesn't regulate his body fluid, like his sodium levels. And without his medication, he would literally pee endlessly and drink endlessly. So it becomes a problem if he can't take his medications, if he's vomiting, right? Because you can see how the cycle could go real bad, real fast. However, I explained it probably pretty poorly right there, but as quickly as I could. And that took 30 seconds. And most of the time, we don't have the space and conversation for this. So for me, even to explain this particular condition and what it means to my son, there's no short way to describe it. And I'm sure your son has a bunch of those as well. And so I think if we as moms recognize that somebody not knowing is just them not knowing, and that we're 100% responsible for creating the space and the relationship for them to know what our life is like. And this becomes really important because the number one thing I hear from moms is we feel alone and misunderstood. Right. And so I think recognizing like, oh, they just have no idea what this means. And so it really is our opportunity, I'll call it, to tell them. Right. If we want to, right. Like again, and there's sometimes we'll be like, we're good. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
I think if somebody is taking the initiative to ask you, how is your son and what's going on with him? Why is he in pain? Then they probably really actually want to know. But we are so sick of talking about it and explaining it to everybody, and we're tired of dealing with it, that it probably does fall on us. And you're right about it being our responsibility. I should get better at that if somebody is genuinely wanting to know how we're doing, or what's going on, or why is he in pain, or why are we having to go to a different hospital for a second opinion. Then I should really take the time to explain it to them and not just nonchalantly brush it off. We're fine, nothing. So what I try to do, and it's not easy, but I don't have the time to sit down and tell everybody exactly what this means, but I try to, what I say is dumb it down, and I have to be dumbed down too. I don't know everything. I just, I know my son's diagnosis, but what I tell them is he has this diagnosis, neuropathic dysmotility. And what it means is the nerves in his colon does not signal to the muscle to move stool out. So it sits there and it creates extreme pain. And that kind of paints a picture, and then so they can understand, oh, okay, I can see how this is painful. If I couldn't do what I'm supposed to do, I could see how that could be painful. And I never really thought about what you said, saying that it's our responsibility. If somebody's taken the time to ask, I think that we should definitely try to genuinely explain to them, because they probably are, maybe they want to be educated. Maybe that will help them in the future. If they hear of another mother or somebody that they know that their kid's going through this, then you could say, hey, refer to this person because they told me about this. So it kind of sounds similar to your situation. So that's definitely going to be on my tasks of things to try to work on.
So you hit on some, again, really good things. I think the belief that the parent or the person asking cares is really valuable to us. We are basically choosing to trust that they care when they ask. But I do want to just put in a caution. I heard you say the word should a couple times, like of saying that just because they care, we still may or may not choose to share. Oh, it rhymes. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to that energy management. What you said is like, oh yeah, we might not want to share in that moment just because that person cares. So I think it's powerful to form the belief that when a mom asks how are they doing, we'll say a friend, it doesn't have to be a mom. When somebody asks how they're doing, it could be an aunt and uncle, then believing that they really care that feels good for us. That produces a good feeling for us that we're cared about, that we're not alone. And it doesn't necessarily mean we have to go and spill the beans and tell the whole long story every time. So anyhow, that's really good stuff. Anything on that before we transition to a different topic?
I am very transparent. I understand that not everybody has the same personality. And if we did, then we would all be irrelevant. So I think that people probably think that I overshare things on I blog and I share things on my personal page, Facebook page, and people probably think that I overshare or may even look at it that I'm complaining. But I do that because I want to be transparent. There are moms out there that are suffering. I am suffering right now mentally. I'm going through a lot right now. We all are. Sometimes I'm better than I am right now, but I'm very transparent because I want another mom who may be, in the dark right now and doesn't share a lot and is too scared to step out and ask for, help or advice or just somebody to talk to. I do it for them. I want them to see you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this. This is raw. This is real. And there's not anything wrong with you. So come talk to me, basically. So with me saying that, when people ask me if I'm okay, I try to venture away from the, oh, I'm great. I typically tell them I'm overwhelmed, I'm overstimulated, but I'll be okay.
I like that answer. I can really relate to the overstimulated part of life. Like, I mean, I also have 4 children buzzing around me. So there's a lot of stimulation, and I'm still working on how to like de-escalate, tools to de-escalate. Yes, I have a very hard time personally answering the question, how are you doing? Because especially when people are asking through the lens of, hey, you're going through a lot right now. Like, how are you? And it's like, well, I'm functioning. I'm here. I'm alive. But like, of course I'm not. This is not a good time. This is a hard season. So like, I don't know, like how, I don't know. You can tell I'm still like, I don't even know how to answer the question. Okay. So you mentioned a little bit like, okay, like it's a hard time. Like it's been a hard time. And I noticed that you went to the gym and that's a priority for you. And tell me a little bit about how you make that happen. And I want to be really careful here and not to look through the lens of like, you just got to try harder and muscle through it and get to the gym, but really coming from a different place of like, okay, this is something that you've identified that really is good for you, is caring for you. And I'm sure it's not easy to break away and do that, especially when you're doing like a 2.5-month hospital stay. So I'd love to hear just your thoughts about it and what works for you as far as creating that as something that you do.
Yeah, so this is a very important topic to me right now in the season that I am in. I do have help, but I can do all of this better on my own. So it's just easier for me to take care of Asher myself. So the problem that I run into is burnout and time for myself. And you hear a lot of times in this journey, you have to be okay for your family to be okay. You have to be okay to take care of your child. And it's absolutely correct. It's hard for me to find time to go to the gym because my husband works a lot. By the time he gets home, it's late. I've got to get meds done for the next day, formula done. I've got to get ready for the next day. And I want to spend time with him. So I either go super early in the morning or I go really late at night. And it is about the fitness, but it's not really so much about, oh, you got to do it. It's more so that's my break. That's my time away. And that can look different for different people. If you don't like the gym, it may be, shopping at Target. I like to do that as well. But it could be anything. It could be sitting on your porch with some coffee and reading a book. But for me, it's the gym. And it's important to me to get out because if not, I think that I will probably go crazy. So that's what I try to make a point to do, whether it's an hour, 2 hours. I usually spend about 2 hours at the gym because I like to sit in the sauna. And honestly, I started listening to your podcast while I was in the sauna after gym. So that's how I came to know you and your podcast. But yes, it's very important because as a regular, and I say regular, meaning a mom that has a neurotypical, which means a child without medical challenges. So quotations, normal. That's you sacrifice as a normal mother, you sacrifice for your children, you sacrifice your time and yourself. But as a special needs mother or a medical mother, as I say, you sacrifice that and more. Sometimes I don't remember who I was before I had my son. And I regret not taking the time that I had, to go to the gym without having to think about who is he going to be with, or if I'm leaving the house, do I have enough stuff if an emergency situation happens, all his medical supplies, or do I have a sitter, or, those type of things. I regret sometimes not taking advantage of that time because now your time is super limited. My time, and it's different for every special needs mother, but my time is figuring out calories and making sure he's getting his fluid intake, his medications, making sure he's doing things that he does in therapy at home, just all of that kind of stuff. And when he has a painful episode, that pushes my time to do all those things back. So time is very limited and missed. But finding the time, if it's 5 minutes for yourself to walk down the road, you have to be okay for your family to be okay. I know for me, if I'm not organized, if I'm mentally unstable, which sometimes I function through it, but then everything kind of goes wrong, kind of like today, Friday the 13th. So that's what I do for myself. I go
Hey,
to the gym.
I was like, today's going to be a good day because it's my son's last day of treatment. So we were like, oh gosh, it's Friday the 13th.
Yes.
That's not that good. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. But yeah, I think actually, I will say that one of the things I say is motherhood is leadership. And what you were just talking about, like if you go wonky, everyone's wonky. Like your boy is not getting well cared for if you are not being well cared for. And it's distinctly different having, times of emergency or very intense times like these hospitalizations, which in your case sound like they're pretty long. But we're not talking about those seasons, right? We're talking about like the everyday, the more regular times, hopefully. But creating a way for you to care for yourself. I think that's kind of what we're looking at. And something I can't help but just put in a little reflection, if you're open. Are you open to a little reflection?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is you said, I can do it better on my own. You're talking about caring for your son. And I just want to put in some doubt of that belief, because that belief ultimately creates you doing it all on your own, which we basically know is not sustainable, especially if something could happen to you, right? And of course we know why you believe this. Like at this point, you're probably right. Like you can do everything better than anybody could because you know him the best. However, I want just to put in the idea of the possibility of you creating a support structure for yourself so that you do have people that you can rely on that doesn't put you in the position of alone. That's a lot to hold as one human being. So what are your thoughts on that idea and the opening of creating a different relationship to being the only one?
It is tough to think about as a mother. I think you just kind of worry about, are they giving the right dose of meds, or are they giving the right amount of formula so that he is getting his calories? And those are just some of my worries. But I've only just now got to the point in this journey where I have started opening up more to people around me and creating my support system. For a long time, I was alone. And there are times that I am alone. Like I said, it all comes in seasons. Things change. It's not, some days are good, some days are bad. So it is hard because sometimes you have to mentally check out and you need to rely on somebody else. And for me, it's typically my husband. He helps me out a lot. I mean, even after working 24 plus 12-hour shifts and cutting grass all day, he will come in and help me so I can be relieved. And I think it really goes into just a lot of trust and medical experience as well, depending on what you're dealing with. For my son, it would be because he's got a feeding tube and stuff like that, and sometimes he has breathing issues. So it depends for me on who's CPR certified and stuff like that, because he does have emergencies out of nowhere where he stops breathing, and so that's a big thing for me. But as far as a support system, whether it is somebody locally to you or on a group, a support group, I have tons of friends that I know just through support groups. Never met them in my life. There's people that live out of USA that I am friends with, and I cannot get through this without them. So even if they're not physically coming to take care of him so I can go do something else, they're mentally taking care of me. And that's big for me. I have a support system of his therapists, his physicians or nurses, people that follow his page. I'm actually probably a little bit closer to some strangers that I've never met in my life, than I am my family. So I heavily rely on them not as much on the physical part, but more so the mentally part for them to talk to me and simmer me down after an episode. But as far as the physical aspect, I really think that it depends on who you have around you and what resources you even have locally. For me, I just only really have my husband to rely on, or if I could pay somebody and train them. But at that time, special needs moms are typically stay-at-home moms, and they don't really have the type of financial ability to pay and train somebody. And then sometimes you don't qualify for nursing. So there's a lot of aspects into that topic, I think. And I think it really just depends on who you are and what's going on.
I think you hit on something that is a real core and foundational piece, and it's trust. And I think when we as moms of these children already feel so vulnerable, like we can barely hold it together as far as what we're doing is like life critical to their existence, it's extra vulnerable to hand it off to somebody else. Right. And so I think it's just easier when it's already so hard to say, no, like I can't handle that level of vulnerability. And so we don't have to hand it all over at one time, but it's just a place to get curious about what might be available if you're willing to lean into that. And yeah, maybe there's a million different situations. I know I was working with one of my clients about basically she had been awarded some care, but it was still so hard to accept it because of the vulnerability, right? And so I think it's a whole nother topic for an episode, but we'll have to do that another time because I want to wrap this up and just really thank you so much for this conversation. There was a lot of questions I didn't get to, but I think what we were able to talk about, I think is really rich and meaningful. And I think moms are going to connect with it and be saying, I totally get what they're talking about, which is really the heart of this show. Anything you want to share, anything on your heart as we wrap up?
I really just appreciate you just talking with you. I think connecting with somebody who understands really relieves stress. It's been a very long week and people don't understand. I mean, they'll be there for you, they'll listen to you, but talking about these topics and hopefully helping anybody that's listening is kind of where my heart is right now because I need that. So talking with you today has been really helpful for me.
Likewise, it's been rich for me as well. And yeah, just a real privilege. I think you wrote it actually, something that you wrote on your blog that I really loved, and we'll wrap with this, is that while this is a privilege you sincerely love, it is hard. And so with that, we'll see you all on the next episode. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.